Welcome to what is now episode 7 of TOCA Touring Car Championship, and where we are now going to Brands Hatch.
Next stop is Brands Hatch for round 7 and 8 of this year's championship. The first qualifying round is just about to start, so let's go down to the track and take a look.
Let's now go through qualifying and see how dismal we do.
Well, it was a very tight session, but Menu finally comes away with the pole.
That's more or less where I'd expect myself to be. But still, I think my 46.8, that was actually a pretty good lap, all things considered.
Well, the cars are now lined up on the grid and ready to start the round. So let's get down to the track.
And it's go at Brands Hatch, and already off to a good start, and plus furthermore one of the Peugeots qualifying in the top 10. Going to assume that's probably Tim Harvey, as he's already muscling his way up into 8th position past the second Volvo and also the second of the two Audis, it looks like, who officially gave me the bumper, but I wasn't having it. I've already moved up to 9th now in the space of just 3 corners, as we now head up to Graham Hill Bend and into the final corner of the Indy circuit we go, and almost losing it, but somehow managing to keep myself in control, and that Audi is not going gentle on me, so I will have to give him a little payback just to show that I don't mess around with guys who bump me. As of which, this is one thing you more or less learn to become accustomed to as you progress your way through this game, and it's also the longest race in terms of laps, as of which we have a total of 38 laps we need to complete around Brands Hatch, a circuit which I've actually been to personally, and it's located in Falcombe, Kent, so it's quite literally just a few miles outside London. And I also learned from an old telecast at this track that if you can look from the right angle of the old Grand Prix circuit, you can actually see Big Ben if you're in the right place on the track itself. I did actually learn from an old telecast about this track that from a certain view you can actually see Big Ben, which is more or less considered by many as being the biggest tourist attraction in London. It's also the centre of Westminster Abbey. Just figured I'd point that out, even though I'm not talking politics. So, now closing in on the second Volvo, it looks like, of Leslie Burt. Gave him a little bit of a bump there as we went through Druids. Now heading down the hill through the Jim Clark corner, and now on the back stretch as we head up into Graham Hill Bend, although Graham Hill never did win here at Brands Hatch or Silverstone, was probably the one race that eluded him the most, especially considering he came damn close a couple of times but never could manage to achieve full fruition under those ambitions. Ironically, the same Graham Hill who was also known as Mr. Monaco, because he won at that one track 5 times. And 3 of those wins he got were consecutive. He won at Monaco 3 times in a row from 63 to 65, and oh, there goes the Honda, and he just took me out with them. Oh, that's a shame. I'm going to assume the Honda must have just spun out on his own, but unfortunately I also had to be involved in the wreck, so I did try to avoid it, but in the end he was just in my path. I was too close to him. I couldn't swerve to avoid him, because even if I did I would have risked spinning out anyway. I'm also pretty sure I would have been hit by the Volvo behind me anyway. Well, the revolving Volvo behind me anyway, and I think before the halfway point I can close up a 5-point deficit to Menu. I know that's not the sort of deficit I want to go into heading into the first quarter of the season, but again, I think it's a gap I can close up again once I get some momentum going, and once I know Menu has a couple of poor finishes. Of course, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I would like it to be the case, because then, if it does happen, I'm basically back in the hunt. I mean, there's only 5 points between us, and we still have a long way to go in this championship before we reach the end. I mean, I practically had a horrible race at Thruxton last time out, and yet somehow, in spite of all the carnage and chaos I had to endure in that one race, I still managed to come home 5th. Which, oddly enough, even to me, I consider to be an achievement, because I would have thought for sure I was probably going to get 6th or 7th at best. I might have even got 4th as well in that race had I not spun on the final lap, but, you know. History never seems to remember what could have been. It always seems to remember what has been, and at the moment, I know I've now fallen down to 2nd, but if I can get some momentum going and I can manage to catch up to Menu, as of which this is going to be a long race, and we do have a total of 76 laps we'll be driving around Brands Hatch on this race weekend, although we will of course return to this track later on in the season. It's also pretty bumpy, but I am now closing in on the Volvo once again, trying to see if I can look for 7th position, also trying to achieve it cleanly. He tries to shut the door on me, but I slot in behind him. He knows I'm not going to fall for the brake check, and I'm now up into 7th position, and I have a 4-second deficit to close up to the leading Volvo of Ricard Rydell, meaning that the second Volvo who I just overtook was Leslie Burt, and I'm slowly but surely eating into that 4-second gap. It's now down to 3.5 seconds as we come through to completing lap 9. So what my main objective here is, I have to try and see if I can outscore Menu. If I can outscore him by 5 points, then maybe there is a chance of me getting back up into the lead. So, heading through the Jim Clark curve once again, trying not to repeat the mistake I made on the previous lap. I did also make sure my sensitivity was on. Oh, fuck me. It's also a shame to say how this game does not have a reset option. Something is also telling me I might have to restart this race if something like that happens again. Even though I will have to repeat the whole weekend as a result, which I don't want to do, but I might have to do. I really thought for sure I was going to spin again there. And well, if the sensitivity was on medium, then I probably would have spun again. Even though, at the moment, it looks as though the best position I'm really fighting for is 8th. And that's not going to work because I need to finish in 6th or better if I'm going to press on to the next round, because this does not look as though it's going to meet my expectations. Or the game's expectations, in fact. Well, still have another 27 laps to go, so maybe I can manage to claw my way through the field and make as little mistakes as possible. And then, if I can achieve that, then maybe it's possible for me to get back into the fight. Even though I cannot make any promises in saying it will be an easy fight. I'd like it to be easy, but I can assure you it probably won't be easy. Oh hey, we're both catching up to Rydell, which means he is just in front of both of us, and Leslie is not wanting me to move up into 7th position, but he knows I'm not gonna give up the fight. And closing up now to Rydell in the leading Volvo. And oh, he's spinning. Ricard Rydell has just spun, which now promotes me to 6th position. So at least it goes to show even the AI can make mistakes. And yo, one of the Peugeots is inside the top 5. That's one thing I actually didn't notice from qualifying. Tim Harvey is actually up to 5th of all positions. He is running in 5th. I mean, my god. I've heard of the Peugeot being good at some tracks, but I did not think he was going to be that good. Well, at least I can say I'm closing in, so still another 25 laps to go, and it will be 24 next time around once I have completed this lap, and then maybe if it's possible I can actually manage to achieve some perseverance from overlapping back markers, because I'm pretty sure the leaders aren't too far ahead. And I set a new best lap time of 45.75 seconds, and I just hit the wall again. Son of a bitch. This is not going to go down very well, I don't think. Well, at least I'm in my minimum required position of 6th. Although from here, it's going to be quite a struggle for me to get up into the top 4. Of course, it's not really the competition I need to worry about, it's just Menu, who seems to be outscoring me and is clearly better than me at the moment. And I'm actually ashamed to say that the best position I can manage at the moment is 6th. You know, if Menu does have a DNF up to this point, that will put me back in the fight. And apparently he's closing in on one of the runners, but dependent on knowing if that's Menu or not remains to be seen. I'm pretty sure it isn't, but I'm hopeful in saying it's Menu he's closing up to. So the back markers must really not be helping out this AI. And I am going to assume that's one of the runners up ahead, judging by the blue and yellow I can see. And I've now set another new best lap time. So this car definitely has some pace. Oh, sorry Tim. Fuck me. I did not know Tim was on the outside. I really am sorry about that, Tim. That is a great shame. I'm actually mad at myself now. Well, at least I'm up to 4th. So maybe if it's possible, I can get myself into a position that's promising. Even though it looks as though Anthony Reid at the moment is battling with the two Fords in the second of the two Nissans, and don't know where the top three positions are, but I really do hope that was Menu I overtook. Although it's more than likely to be Plato the way I see it, and almost getting involved in that little scuffle, but somehow managing to dodge the bullets, and now I'm up into 4th position. So 7.3 seconds is now the interval, and I think you earn 9 points if you finish in 4th. Although I will need to have a look at the point scoring positions again in the game manual to be sure. But what I do know is that technically it's 15 points for a win, 12 for second and 10 for third. We are now approaching the halfway point of this race, as I'm now closing in on the 3rd placed car. It looks like it's just my teammate. Correction, it's my teammate Derek I'm closing in on. He's just a back marker. That's precisely what I wanted to do. Well, at least I can say there is still hope. I'm just hopeful in saying that was Menu I managed to overtake, even though it probably isn't. And I have an 8-second gap I now need to close up to the leading Audi, so I'm really going to have to try and see if I can limit the mistakes here. Although, at least I can say, unlike Thruxton, this race has not been as much of a barn burner. And yet somehow, amidst all of the chaos, I still managed to come home 5th. It surprises even me to know that, in spite of probably all the terminal damage I had, I still came home in 5th. Come on, Derek, please let me through, please let me through. Come on, don't race me, please let me through. Okay. I am through. I have now cleared my teammate Derek Warwick, who I think is in 11th position, so he's just out of the points, although if someone does drop out at this point, he could very well be in the points, as I'm now onto lap 21, and a 5-second gap now to the leading Audi, as of which I've already cleared one of them. And it looks as though the leaders are not too far ahead of me, so there's still plenty of time. Anything can happen up to this point. I just hope I can manage to minimise the mistakes from here onwards, and I can also manage to do the... oh, fuck. And I just hit the cones. Oh well. Anyways, closing in on the leading Audi of what I think is Frank Beeler, although it's probably James Bintcliffe the way I see it. And up into lap 22 now, as I am looking for 3rd position, and he was not wanting me to get the position, so he threw the block on me, but it did not work. And now I have a 12.8 second gap to close up to catch up to the Honda. I am going to assume it's one of the Renaults that's leading this race, but for the love of God, I hope it's Jason Plato leading this race and not Menu. Because if it is, then, well, I'm in trouble. Although my position coming out of Thruxton, it could have been a lot more precarious than it actually was, because I had a pretty hard time last time out in Thruxton. I mean, I was able to finish 2nd in the first race, but the second race, oh, God give me strength. That second race, I think to say the least, it was abysmal, because of how much chaos there was in that one race alone. it basically felt as if I was trying to survive a restrictor plate race at Daytona. It's basically almost as if once you know the big one happens right in front of you, you just know you've got an unlikely to almost no chance of avoiding it. Especially if you know it's in the tri-oval. You've basically got no chance of avoiding it, and now I'm definitely closing in on the leading Honda, and I am going to assume it's James Thompson who is the leading Honda in this, and almost losing control again, but again, the AI must be having the same issues I am, so I am now closing in on Thompson and taking second position. Now I just have to hope I can hold on to it. I am pretty much clear of the leading Honda now, and all I have to do is catch up to the leading Renault, who is 21 seconds clear of me, but if he spins then that interval could easily erode. I am slowly closing in, but it just depends on knowing if I have enough time to do it. And right before disaster strikes, I have to lift off the throttle coming out of the Jim Clark curve so I don't end up spinning the car. And now coming on to the Jack Brabham straight, who did apparently win at all three British GP tracks in 1966, as of which he has one win to his name at Aintree, Silverstone and Brands Hatch, the three British racing venues who have all hosted a Formula One Grand Prix since the sport was first launched in... It also doesn't help in how there isn't a reset button, and I kind of wish there was. Well, at least I can say contact from the Honda will help get me back up to speed. Yeah, 30.5 seconds. Okay, now I don't think I'll be able to catch him. And if it is Menu who is leading this race, and I have no doubt in saying it probably is, then that interval is now going to increase to 9 points, because he is clearly that much better than me. Unless he gets held up by back markers and he spins out probably twice, which is what I'm hoping for. I'd really like it to not be Menu who was leading this race, but in all realism, I think it is Menu leading this race. Which means he is now going to increase the points gap from 5 points to 9, it would appear. So, yeah. Okay, I am sad now. Yeah, there's no way I'm closing that 30-second gap. That's too much for me to handle. Unless the back markers start causing him serious problems. Or if something just happens to him. I don't think I'm going to catch him. But again, for me to fight my way up to second, that is still a good thing. But again, I'm really going to have to win the next race here at Brands Hatch if I'm going to be considered a contender, and the leader is just extending. I'm pretty sure it's Menu who is at the front because he's clearly more consistent than I have been. I don't anticipate myself closing in on him unless he has a crash somewhere. That's pretty much the only hope I really have of catching him now, because I think the interval is pretty much balanced now. I don't think I'm going to catch the leader, whoever it is. I hope it's Plato, but it's probably Menu who is the leader, because he is clearly more consistent than I am. And he clearly makes less mistakes than I do. Yeah, I think that interval is pretty much balanced out now. I don't think I'm going to catch up to Menu, if that's who it is leading. And if it is, then I'm really going to need to get the hammer down in race 2 and make as minimal mistakes as possible. Because it looks as though at this point, Menu is only going to be extending his lead. Well, at least I can say I am ahead of... well, at least it means I'm ahead of the leading Honda. And we now have just 8 laps to go, although I'm pretty sure these are not going to be pleasurable laps. And one of the Peugeots just spun out again, and yeah, you know what, I'm not even going to bother doing a 360 turn. I'm just going to reverse whilst I'm on the hill. And now my laptop is failing to respond to me, so that's even more of a telltale sign. But yeah, Menu is definitely not losing this race now. He's probably going to overlap me sooner or later. At least I'm pretty sure that's what'll happen, because I just don't think I'm going to be able to catch him. Yeah, there's no way I'm catching him now. I'm hoping it's Jason Plato out in front, but it's probably Menu. So that really means that for the next 3 races I'm going to have to consistently outscore him. If it is Menu who is leading this race, and it probably is, because I don't think I'm going to catch up to him. Well, at least I can say I'm doing my best to not be overlapped, which is something. But yeah, I really need to go on a consistency spree if I'm going to get myself ahead of Menu, as in I'm going to have to consistently outscore him if I am going to be considered a contender for the rest of this championship. Although, I just really hope the second race does not become a chaotic shit show. Well, I am closing in at least, as I'm now on to lap 33, but I don't really think this is going to be any better than it actually is. And got some lapped traffic up ahead of me, so doesn't look as though I'm going to clear this. Looks as though I'm coming up to overlap one of the Audis now, but really wouldn't surprise me if it is Menu who is out in front, because he has clearly been the dominator of the day here in race 1 for the first of our 2 visits to Brands Hatch, and almost getting wiped out there by the Audi, but again, really wouldn't have made any difference in terms of my track position, because I would have been finishing second anyway. I also don't see who's in third, but wouldn't surprise me if it is Jason Plato who has now moved up to third. But again, for every point I'm able to take away from Menu, that's pretty much the best glimmer of hope I have about scoring him. Just basically, you know, seeming to consistently score points ahead of him. That's the only hope I really have. Oh, you motherfucker. You total motherfucker. Oh, okay, yeah, that is a problem now. I have the rest of the pack behind me, and if I spin again, then I'm basically going to be overlapped. It also wouldn't surprise me if it is Menu who is going to overlap me now in just a matter of seconds. Because Menu has just been clearly the best car of this race. I mean, he's just been the dominator, basically. And I'm pretty sure if I spin one more time, I'm going to lose even more positions than I need to. So I'm really going to have to hope I can just keep this car on track for the rest of this race. It's probably the only hope I really have of being able to, you know, just get these two races over with. Well, at least I can say if Menu is being held up by traffic, then it at least means I will manage to get the full race distance in next time around if traffic is holding him up. And that's a good thing, because Menu technically does not have to overlap the entire field to showcase his dominance, because that's just how much better I think Menu is over me. And I basically knew from lap 30 there was no hope in me catching him, because he was just literally that dominant. And coming up now to overlapping one of the Ford Mondeos once again. Thankfully I did not run into the back of him as I went past him, and now coming through the final sequence of corners. Doesn't look as though I will beat Renault on this day. I hope it's Plato who dominated this one, but it probably isn't. And now I just have to hold on for these final 100 meters and hand it over to Tiffany Dell.
A comfortable victory in the end then for Menu, who drove a superb race. So let's have a closer look at the final positions.
I knew it. I fucking knew it right from the start. I knew it had to be Menu who was dominating. I almost had no chance of catching him whatsoever, the way I see it. Well, at least I can say Plato finishes 4th, and yo, Tim Harvey scores points for Peugeot. Alright. That's almost every team now, with the exception of Ford, who have scored a point in this race. Sorry, scored a point in this championship. Ford, I believe, is now the only team to not score points. But anyways, that was race 1, so let's now move on to race 2, which will be coming up next. So race 1 is down. Menu is now up to 9 points ahead of me, meaning I really need this to probably be my best race of the season so far. But anyways, stay tuned for more TOCA.